The Crimson Crown Café sat nestled between two ancient stone buildings in the heart of Ravencrest, a city where modernity had slowly crept in around the edges of history without ever quite consuming it. Medieval architecture mingled with Victorian facades and modern conveniences, creating a place where time seemed to fold in on itself. The café's interior matched this fusion, Edison bulbs hanging from exposed wooden beams, stone walls draped with velvet curtains, and sleek digital tablets for taking orders. Mara Hartley wiped down the counter for the 5th time that evening, her eyes darting toward the ornate double doors that led to the café's exclusive private dining room. The Nightshade Chamber, they called it, reserved exclusively for the vampire nobility that ruled Ravencrest from the shadows. "They're coming again tonight," whispered Fiona, another waitress, her voice tight with fear and fascination. "The Nightblood Court. Mara, you have got to take my shift in the Nightshade. Please." "Last time Lord Destin looked at me, I nearly fainted." Mara sighed, tucking a strand of copper hair behind her ear. "Fine, but you owe me fi." In truth, Mara did not mind. Unlike most humans in Ravencrest who lived in fear of their immortal overlords, she found them fascinating. The Nightblood Court had revealed themselves to humanity only 50 years ago, offering protection and prosperity in exchange for willing blood donors and peaceful coexistence. The transition had not been without conflict, but Ravencrest had become a model of human-vampire relations, at least on the surface. The bell above the café door chimed as the first patrons of the night entered. Not the vampires, but their human entourage, assistants, blood servants, and courtiers who managed daylight affairs. They moved with practiced efficiency, inspecting the Nightshade Chamber, setting out specific wines, checking the privacy curtains, and adjusting the dimmed chandelier. An hour later, the room was prepared, and Mara felt the shift in the air before she saw them. The café fell silent as the door opened again, admitting 5 figures who moved with inhuman grace. First came Lord Destin Ravenwood, master of the Nightblood Court, his face an ageless mask of aristocratic beauty framed by shoulder-length black hair. Behind him walked Lady Alicia, her white blonde hair cascading down her back like moonlight. Then 2 vampire nobles Mara recognized as council members, and finally, a young man who looked no older than 25, with startling silver eyes and chestnut hair that fell in gentle waves to his jawline. The prince. Mara had heard of him but never seen him before. "Prince Kasimir has graced us with his presence," Fiona whispered, peering around the corner. "They say he has not left the fortress in decades." Mara watched as the group moved toward the Nightshade Chamber, struck by the way the young prince seemed to exist in his own separate world. While the other vampires acknowledged the bowing humans with regal nods, the prince kept his eyes downcast, his hands clasped before him. There was something different about him, something vulnerable that seemed at odds with the predatory nature of his kind. When they disappeared behind the heavy curtains of the chamber, Mara gathered her notepad and steeled herself. Serving the Nightblood Court was an honor, and potentially dangerous. As she approached the chamber, she overheard Lord Destin speaking in sharp, clipped tones. "You will conduct yourself appropriately tonight, Kasimir. The blood-sworn emissaries arrive tomorrow, and we cannot afford any incidents." Mara paused, taking a deep breath before pushing aside the velvet curtain. "Good evening, my lords and lady. I am Mara, and I will be serving you tonight." Lord Destin barely glanced at her. "Blood wine for the table. The 1786 vintage." Lady Alicia offered a cold smile. "And bring the music player. Something classical." Mara nodded, careful to keep her eyes lowered in deference. But she could not help noticing that Prince Kasimir was staring at her with undisguised curiosity. When their eyes met briefly, he quickly looked away. As she turned to fulfill their requests, she heard Lady Alicia speaking to the prince. "At least attempt to engage with the conversation, Kasimir. Your continued silence grows tiresome. The court already whispers about the mute prince." When Mara returned with their wine and the small music player, the nobles were deep in political discussion. She placed the blood wine on the table and quietly set up the music, all the while aware of the prince's eyes following her movements. As she served each vampire, she noticed that no one addressed Prince Kasimir directly, speaking around and about him as though he were not present. The eastern territories grow restless. One of the council members was saying, "The blood-sworn hunters have increased their numbers there." "Let them come," Lord Destan replied, swirling his wine. "They cannot break the covenant. Not while we hold the ancient texts." As Mara reached Prince Kasimir to pour his wine, she accidentally brushed his hand with hers. The contact sent a jolt through her body like static electricity, and she nearly dropped the bottle. "My apologies, Your Highness," she murmured. The prince did not respond verbally, but his eyes, silver with flecks of gold, held hers for a moment longer than was proper. Then, to her surprise, his hands moved in a subtle gesture she immediately recognized. "It is nothing," he signed, his movements so quick and subtle that the others did not notice. Mara's heart skipped. She had learned sign language years ago to communicate with her deaf cousin. Without thinking, she responded, her hands low and movements discreet. "You sign?" The prince's eyes widened in shock. Then something like hope flickered across his face before he carefully composed his features again. He gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "Is there a problem, girl?" Lady Alicia asked sharply, noticing the extended moment between them. "No, my lady. Would you like anything else with your wine?" The conversation resumed, but everything had changed for Mara. Throughout the evening, she returned to the chamber multiple times to refill glasses and bring requested items. Each time, she managed a brief exchange with Prince Kasimir through subtle signs, hidden from the others by her body positioning or the table. "They think I choose not to speak," he signed during one such moment. "But you cannot?" she responded. "Not since the curse," his hands replied before he could stop himself, concern flashing across his face at having revealed too much. Their exchanges were fleeting but charged with an electricity that made Mara's heart race. She learned that the prince had been mute for over a century, that the others in the court treated his silence as a willful eccentricity or weakness, and that no one in the vampire world had bothered to learn sign language to communicate with him. As the night progressed, Lord Destan and the council members became increasingly absorbed in their political discussions, paying less attention to the prince or the human servant. During one visit to the chamber, Mara found Prince Kasimir alone, the others having stepped out to examine some ancient text in Lord Destan's carriage. "They will return shortly," he signed, more freely now that they were alone. "You are the first person to speak to me directly in 73 years. Mara's heart ached at the loneliness in his expression. "How did it happen?" she signed. "Blood magic gone wrong." His hands moved gracefully. "A ritual when I was newly turned. My father believes my voice will return with time, but—" The curtain rustled, and they both froze. Mara quickly busied herself collecting empty glasses as Lord Destan returned. "We depart," he announced. "The meeting is concluded for tonight." As the vampires rose to leave, Prince Kasimir lingered behind. While the others strode ahead, he pressed a folded note into Mara's palm, his cold fingers brushing against her warm skin. Then he was gone, moving with supernatural speed to rejoin his court. In the quiet aftermath of their departure, Mara unfolded the note with trembling fingers. "The Eastern Garden of Ravenwood Fortress. Midnight tomorrow. Please come if you can." Ravenwood Fortress loomed against the night sky, its ancient stone walls and Gothic spires silhouetted by the full moon. Mara approached the Eastern Garden with her heart pounding in her chest, questioning her sanity with each step. Coming here was forbidden, dangerous, potentially fatal. Yet she could not deny the pull she felt toward the silent prince. The Eastern Garden was separated from the fortress proper by a high stone wall covered in ancient vines. A small, wrought-iron gate stood slightly ajar, as if waiting for her. Mara slipped through, finding herself in a moonlit paradise of night-blooming flowers, their heady fragrance filling the air. Prince Kasimir stood near an ornate fountain, more relaxed than she had seen him at the café. Gone was the stiff formality of court attire, replaced by a simple black shirt and trousers. He looked almost human, save for the otherworldly pallor of his skin and the unnatural stillness with which he held himself. He smiled when he saw her, a genuine smile that transformed his features from merely handsome to breathtaking. You came, he signed, his movements eager. I was curious, Mara replied both verbally and with her hands, and perhaps a little reckless. I cannot offer you safety, he signed, his expression growing serious. My father would not approve of this meeting. Yet you risked it anyway. His hands moved fluidly. Eternity grows unbearably long when no one hears you. They walked together through the garden, conversing more freely than either had in years. Kasimir explained through sign that he had been a musician before being turned 3 centuries ago, that music had been his voice, his passion. Lord Destan, his sire, not his biological father, had offered immortality, and Kasimir had accepted, not understanding the full price. The ritual was meant to enhance my musical abilities, he signed. Instead, it took my voice entirely. Father believes it was sabotage from a rival court. And there is no way to break this curse? Mara asked. Kasimir's hands stilled momentarily. There are always ways to break blood curses, but the cost is usually greater than the reward. As they talked, Mara revealed her own story, how she had come to Ravencrest after her parents died, how she had learned sign language for her cousin, how she had always felt like an outsider among humans who feared what they did not understand. I have watched you at the café, Kasimir admitted. You treat vampires and humans with the same respect. You see people, not monsters or masters. People are just people, Mara signed. Immortal or not. Their conversation flowed until the eastern sky began to lighten imperceptibly. Kasimir tensed, looking toward the horizon. You must go, he signed urgently. The sun rises soon, and the day guards will change shifts. As Mara turned to leave, Kasimir caught her hand. His touch was cool but not unpleasant. Will you meet me again? His free hand signed. Yes, she responded without hesitation. What began that night evolved over the following weeks into a secret friendship that defied the rigid boundaries between human and vampire. Mara continued to serve at the Crimson Crown Café, occasionally catching glimpses of the Nightblood Court, but never again was Prince Kasimir among them. Instead, they met in the Eastern Garden during her nights off, sharing stories and slowly bridging the chasm between their worlds. During one such meeting, Kasimir brought a violin. I cannot sing, he signed, but my fingers remember music. The melody he played spoke of longing, of centuries of solitude, of hope rekindled. Mara sat transfixed as the music swelled around them, feeling as though she could see his soul laid bare in each note. When he finished, setting the violin aside, something had shifted between them. No longer was this merely friendship born of mutual understanding. Something deeper had taken root. Your music still has a voice, Mara signed, tears glistening in her eyes. Kasimir moved closer, his hands gently framing her face. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Mara found herself drawn to him like a moth to flame. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle yet electric, sending sparks of sensation through her body. When they parted, Kasimir's eyes had darkened, the silver now rimmed with crimson. He stepped back abruptly, turning away until he regained control. I should not have done that, he signed when he faced her again. Your blood. It calls to me in ways I cannot explain. Is it because you hunger? Mara asked, unafraid. No. His hands moved decisively. It is because you are special. There is something in your bloodline, something ancient that resonates with the magic in mine. Before they could explore this revelation further, a sound from the fortress caught Kasimir's attention. His posture changed instantly, alert and wary. Someone comes, he signed quickly. You must hide. Mara barely had time to conceal herself behind a large flowering bush before Lady Alicia glided into the garden, her presence as cold and beautiful as moonlight on snow. Kasimir, she spoke, her voice like chiming crystal. Your father requests your presence in the ritual chamber. The blood-sworn emissaries arrive at dawn, and preparations must be made. Kasimir nodded, his face a careful mask once more. I smell human, Lady Alicia remarked, her nostrils flaring delicately. Have you been feeding in the gardens again? Your father would not approve of hunting outside the designated areas. Kasimir shook his head. Still maintaining your silence, even with me? Lady Alicia sighed dramatically. Very well, but do not keep your father waiting. After she departed, Kasimir quickly returned to Mara. You must go and not return for several nights, he signed urgently. The Bloodsworn are vampire hunters who have negotiated an uneasy peace with our kind. Their presence makes the court dangerous for humans. What is happening, Kasimir? Mara asked, sensing his fear. Politics that have been brewing for centuries, he replied. My father seeks to renew an ancient covenant, one that would strengthen his power over all vampire courts. The ritual requires. He hesitated. It requires the blood of an unmarked. What is an unmarked? A human with old blood that has never been tainted by vampire feeding or influence. Blood with latent magic of its own. His eyes met hers with sudden intensity. Blood like yours. A chill ran down Mara's spine. How can you know that? I felt it when we touched, when we kissed. His hands moved more urgently now. You must stay away from the fortress, from the café, from any place the court might find you. If they discover what you are. A bell tolled from deep within the fortress, cutting their conversation short. Go now, he signed. I will find a way to warn you when it is safe. Mara fled the garden with her mind racing and her heart pounding. As she hurried through the sleeping city toward her small apartment, she could not shake the feeling that something monumental had been set in motion. Something that threatened to engulf both her and the silent prince in its wake. 3 days passed with no word from Kasimir. Mara avoided the café, calling in sick and hiding in her apartment. On the 4th day, unable to bear the isolation and uncertainty any longer, she ventured out to purchase groceries. The city felt different. Vampire guards patrolled the streets more visibly, and humans hurried about their business with downcast eyes. Something had shifted in the delicate balance of Ravencrest. As Mara paid for her groceries, a newspaper headline caught her eye. Bloodsworn negotiations fail. Curfew reinstated. She purchased the paper and read it on her walk home, learning that the meeting between Lord Destan and the Bloodsworn emissaries had collapsed into accusations of treachery. The peace that had allowed humans and vampires to coexist in Ravencrest for 50 years now hung by a thread. When Mara reached her apartment building, she sensed immediately that something was wrong. The door to her unit stood slightly ajar, when she was certain she had locked it. Setting her groceries down quietly in the hallway, she approached cautiously. Mara Hartley. The voice from within her apartment froze her in place. Female. Aristocratic. Familiar. Lady Alicia sat perched on Mara's small sofa, looking tremendously out of place among the modest furnishings. Her white blonde hair was arranged in an elaborate updo, her gown a masterpiece of midnight blue silk and silver embroidery. Please enter your own home, Lady Alicia said with a cold smile. We have matters to discuss. Mara stepped inside, her heart hammering. My lady, I am honored by your visit, but let us dispense with pleasantries, Lady Alicia interrupted. I know about your meetings with Prince Kasimir. Mara's blood ran cold. I do not. Lying to a vampire is futile, girl. We can hear the change in your heartbeat. Lady Alicia rose with fluid grace. The prince has been distracted, rebellious. Now I understand why. She circled Mara slowly, like a predator. What interests me, she continued, is how strongly your blood calls to me. I thought perhaps you were merely his plaything, but you are something far more valuable, are you not? Mara remained silent, remembering Kasimir's warning about the unmarked. You are required at Ravenwood Fortress tonight, Lady Alicia announced. Lord Destan wishes to speak with you. And if I refuse? Lady Alicia's laugh was like breaking glass. Oh, my dear, no one refuses Lord Destan. Before Mara could react, Lady Alicia moved with supernatural speed, pressing a cloth over her nose and mouth. The sweet-smelling chemical overwhelmed her senses, and darkness closed in from all sides. When Mara awoke, she found herself in a circular chamber deep beneath Ravenwood Fortress. Stone walls inscribed with ancient runes rose to a domed ceiling painted with celestial scenes. Candles burned in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows across the floor. She lay on a stone table in the center of the room, her wrists and ankles bound by silver chains that seemed to glow with an inner light. Panic surged through her as she tested her restraints and found them unyielding. The Unmarked awakens. Lord Destan emerged from the shadows, his ageless face impassive. He wore ceremonial robes of crimson velvet embroidered with arcane symbols in gold thread. "What do you want from me?" Mara demanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Want? Nothing personal, I assure you." Lord Destan approached the table. "You are merely a necessary component in a ritual centuries in the making." He traced a cold finger along her jawline. "Do you know what makes an unmarked special, Mara Hartley? It is not merely that your blood has never been touched by vampire kind. It is that you carry within you the dormant magic of the old human bloodlines, families who once wielded power to rival our own." "I am just a waitress," Mara insisted. "You are the descendant of Hartwell blood mages who once bound the first vampires to the covenant that still governs us today." Lord Destan's eyes gleamed with triumph. "A fact you were unaware of, clearly, but one that makes you invaluable." Footsteps echoed in the chamber as Lady Alicia entered, followed by the council members Mara recognized from the café. Last came Prince Kasimir, his face a mask of controlled fury when he saw Mara chained to the altar. "Ah, Kasimir, join us," Lord Destan said. "The ritual requires the presence of all royal blood." Casimir's hands flew in angry signs, too fast for Mara to follow completely, but she caught fragments. "Promised no harm and not this way. Still hiding behind those hand gestures?" Lord Destan scoffed. "The girl was always meant for the ritual. Did you think your little garden meetings went unnoticed? I allowed them only to confirm her nature." Mara looked to Kasimir, betrayal and confusion warring in her heart. Had their connection been nothing but a ploy? But the anguish in Kasimir's eyes told a different story. He signed directly to her now. "I did not know. I will not let them hurt you." Lord Destan clapped his hands, and servants entered carrying ceremonial daggers, chalices, and vials of swirling, multicolored liquids. "The covenant weakens," he announced to the assembled vampires. "The blood-sworn grow powerful because our magic fades. Tonight, with the blood of an unmarked descendant of the original covenant makers, we will renew our power and ensure vampire supremacy for another millennium." As the vampires took positions around the stone table, Kasimir moved to stand at Mara's head. His hand briefly touched hers, a gesture hidden from the others. "Trust me," he signed with subtle movements of his fingers against her palm. Lord Destan raised an ornate dagger, its blade gleaming in the candlelight. "With the blood of the unmarked, freely given or forcibly taken, we renew the covenant of night." "Wait!" Kasimir signed broadly, stepping forward so all could see. "The covenant requires blood freely given. Force negates the magic." Lord Destan frowned. "A technicality easily overcome. The girl will consent when she understands the alternative." He turned to Mara, his voice dropping to a silken purr. "Your blood can be taken painlessly in the ritual, or painfully as we feast. The choice is yours, but the outcome remains the same." Mara's mind raced, searching for options. Kasimir had asked for her trust, but what could he possibly do against the assembled power of the Nightblood Court? "What happens to me after this ritual?" she asked, playing for time. "If you survive, you become bloodbound to the court," Lady Alicia answered. "A position of honor, really? And if I refuse?" Lord Destan's patience visibly thinned. "Then we take what we need by force, and you do not survive at all." As he raised the ritual dagger again, Kasimir suddenly moved, placing himself between Mara and his father. His hands signed rapidly, his face intense with determination. The ancient texts specify that the renewal must be performed by one who shares blood with both worlds. Kasimir signed. "A bridge between vampire and human." Lord Destin's eyes narrowed. What nonsense is this? I have studied the original covenant, Kasimir continued signing. In the library archives. The texts you have are translations, copies. I found the originals. A murmur ran through the assembled vampires. Lord Destin's authority rested on his knowledge of the ancient laws and rituals. And what do these supposed originals say? Lady Alicia asked, doubt clear in her voice. Kasimir's hands moved with passionate certainty. They say that the covenant weakens not because of time, but because the balance between our worlds has been corrupted. Vampires rule through fear rather than respect. The renewal requires a true bond between vampire and human, a willing sacrifice of blood and power from both sides. Lord Destin laughed, a sound without humor. And you believe yourself to be this bridge? You, who cannot even speak the ritual words. Kasimir signed one more sentence. I can speak with her blood in me. Before anyone could react, he bent over Mara and whispered in her ear. Actually whispered, his voice a raspy sound and used for a century. Do you trust me? Shocked at hearing his voice, however faint, Mara nodded. In a blur of movement, Kasimir snapped the silver chains binding Mara's right arm. Then, taking the ritual dagger from his stunned father's hand, he cut a small line across her wrist and another across his own. Before anyone could stop him, he pressed their bleeding wrists together. The effect was instantaneous and spectacular. Where their blood mingled, a golden light erupted, spiraling upward to the domed ceiling. The runes carved into the stone walls began to glow with the same light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Kasimir threw his head back, his eyes blazing silver. When he spoke, his voice resonated with power that had been dormant for centuries. I invoke the true covenant, not of subjugation, but of balance. The other vampires fell back, shielding their eyes from the intensifying light. Lord Destin alone stood his ground, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. What have you done? He demanded. What should have been done 50 years ago? Kasimir replied, his voice growing stronger with each word. The original covenant was a pact of mutual protection and respect, not domination. The Bloodsworn know this. It is why they opposed you. The light from their joined blood now filled the chamber, and Mara felt a strange sensation flowing through her veins, like liquid fire that burned without consuming. Ancient knowledge awakened in her mind, the dormant magic of her bloodline stirring to life. The Hartwell blood remembers, she gasped, words coming to her from some ancestral memory. As we bound, so we can release. As we cursed, so we can heal. Together, their voices joined in words neither fully understood, but both somehow knew. An incantation that rippled through the foundations of Ravenwood Fortress and beyond, into the city of Ravencrest itself. The chamber shook. Candles toppled. The other vampires fled in panic, all except Lord Destin, who remained frozen in place by the power of the ritual. You cannot undo centuries of rule, he snarled. The old ways are gone. They return tonight, Kasimir replied, helping Mara to sit up as the remaining chains dissolved into mist. The true covenant is renewed, Father. Not your version, but the original pact, equality between our kinds, mutual protection, shared governance. The golden light began to coalesce, swirling around Lord Destin like a tempest. He fought against it, but the magic lifted him from the ground, suspending him in mid-air. You are bound by the covenant you sought to twist, Mara said, the words flowing through her from that same ancestral memory. You may rule, but only with the consent of a human council. The days of shadow dominion are ended. Lord Destin's scream of rage cut off abruptly as the light enveloped him completely. When it faded, he stood changed, still a vampire lord, but with a new sigil glowing on his forehead, the mark of the balanced covenant. What have you done to me? He whispered, touching the mark with trembling fingers. Bound you to your word, Kasimir answered. The mark will remain as long as you honor the true covenant. Break it, and your immortality breaks with it. Lord Destin staggered backward, then turned and fled the chamber, his ceremonial robes billowing behind him. In the sudden quiet that followed, Mara turned to Kasimir. "Your voice." He smiled, touching his throat in wonder. "Returned through your blood. The curse was tied to the corrupted covenant. When we renewed it properly." He trailed off, still marveling at the sound of his own voice after a century of silence. "What happens now?" Mara asked, feeling simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated, the magic still humming beneath her skin. Kasimir took her hands in his. "Now we rebuild. The covenant magic will spread throughout Ravencrest, affecting all vampires of the Nightblood Court. The balance shifts tonight, but there will be resistance, confusion. Will your father accept this? He has no choice. The mark binds him to the covenant, as it will bind all who wore the crest of the Nightblood Court." Kasimir helped her stand, supporting her when she swayed slightly. "But we have allies too. The Bloodsworn will recognize the true covenant's return. There are vampires in the court who remember the old ways with fondness." As they made their way from the ritual chamber, through corridors where confused vampires and servants stared at the golden sigils that had appeared on walls and doors throughout the fortress, Mara felt the weight of what had occurred settling on her shoulders. "I am not the same anymore, am I?" she asked as they reached the eastern garden, now bathed in pre-dawn light that seemed to cause Kasimir no discomfort. "The awakened blood of the Hartwells flows strong in you now," he confirmed. "You are a blood mage, Mara, perhaps the first in generations of your family. With training, you could wield considerable power." "And us?" she asked softly. "What does this mean for us?" Kasimir's smile was radiant in the growing light. "It means we are bound by something stronger than either of us anticipated. Blood and magic and love," Mara finished for him. Instead of answering with words, Kasimir drew her close and kissed her as the sun broke over the horizon, its rays touching his skin without harm, another gift of the renewed covenant. "I have loved you since you first signed to me in that café," he whispered against her lips. "When everyone else saw only silence, you heard me." 1 year later, the Crimson Crown Café had transformed along with the rest of Ravencrest. Now jointly owned by Mara and Kasimir, it served as both a popular gathering place and a neutral ground where the newly formed Human Council and the Nightblood Court could meet informally. The transition had not been without challenges. Lord Destan had retreated to his private estates, bitter but bound by the covenant mark he could not remove. Lady Alicia had adapted more pragmatically, finding that diplomatic relations with humans offered new avenues of power and influence. Most significantly, Prince Kasimir, his voice fully restored, had emerged as a leader respected by both humans and vampires. His centuries of enforced silence had given him unparalleled skills as a listener, making him an ideal mediator in the new era of cooperation. Mara's own journey had been equally transformative. Under the tutelage of bloodsworn mages who answered the call of the renewed covenant, she had begun to master the blood magic of her ancestral line. The Hartwell powers specialized in binding and healing, in creating connections between unlike entities, a fitting parallel to her role in bridging the vampire and human worlds. On the anniversary of the covenant renewal, Mara stood in the eastern garden of Ravenwood Fortress, now opened as a public park where humans and vampires alike could enjoy the night-blooming flowers. Kasimir approached, carrying a small wooden box. "A gift," he said, presenting it to her. To mark the occasion, inside lay a pendant, a drop of ruby-red crystal suspended in a setting of silver filigree. "It contains a drop of my blood and yours, alchemically transformed," Kasimir explained as he fastened it around her neck. "A permanent blood bond, if you will accept it." The pendant warmed against her skin, and Mara felt the now familiar hum of blood magic responding to his gift. "A blood covenant between just us two?" she asked with a smile. "The most important covenant I will ever make," he replied, drawing her close. "One of equality and choice, of shared strength and mutual protection." As they sealed their personal covenant with a kiss, the pendant glowed with golden light, casting their joined shadows across the garden where a waitress had once seen beyond silence to the person within, and in doing so, had changed the course of history for an entire city. The bond between them pulsed with shared blood and magic, a connection forged in silent conversations, strengthened through shared danger, and now crystallized in a covenant that would last as long as the renewed balance between their worlds. In the distance, the bells of Ravencrest tolled midnight, marking not an ending but a continuation. A story still unfolding between two worlds, brought together by a language without sound and a love that had given voice to the voiceless.